is just thinking about, like, if my highest goal is to point my kids to Christ and Christmas, are all these other things just diluting what Christmas means to my kids? So you really want to form some Christmas traditions that are all about Jesus. They're not just, what the rest of the world is doing. You want to forge a new way for your family, but maybe you didn't even grow up in a Christian household and you're like, what do you do to point your kids to Christ for Christmas? I'm going to share all of that in this video. I'm going to share my why, how to form your why. I'm going to share ideas on things maybe perhaps to cut, what to add, resources that have been helpful to me. And I'm even going to talk a little bit about Santa. And one thing I want to kind of also talk about is, how do we deal with family when they don't understand that we don't want to do all the traditions that they think are important, that we're forging a new way for our kids, and kind of how to set boundaries for all that. We're going to talk about all of that in this video. So hey, my name is Lana. This is Girl Teach Me. This whole channel is just to help you be more intentional in your motherhood, to help you on the motherhood journey. It is a hard but rewarding journey that can sometimes feel very lonely. So I hope this channel is just a huge resource for you. So I'd love for you to hit subscribe and to stick around. So let's jump into it. So I think the first thing is start with your why. And all of our whys are going to be just slightly worded different. But the why is probably something like, I really want my kids to know that Christmas is all about Jesus. I want the season to be a time of slowing down and just thinking of him and celebrating him. But if you can kind of formulate your why, like just take a second, and just jot down why. Why do I want Christmas to be all about Jesus? It can kind of help you when you start to think about what you want to add, how you cull through all the really great traditions you could have to kind of pick the ones that you really want to go for. It can just be really fun to forge your own way. I think it can be a little daunting to be like, I have no idea. I have no idea how to, maybe I have 2 little kids and I have no idea how to get their eyes on Jesus and off a million presents and off of Santa and all the things to help them really understand. But what can be really exciting if you flip that around in your head is I get to create whatever traditions I want to. And it can just get you really excited about the creative process of this is your family. This is the children that God has blessed you with. And this is your opportunity to just sow seeds in their heart. Christmas is a time of wonder and waiting anyways, and so what a sweet opportunity to just plant seeds for Christ. I think it's really helpful to think about what you want to cut before you think about what you want to add, because we could just do all the things of the world and then stack all the things about Jesus on top, but I feel like that's going to dilute some things. And so what can be really helpful is just this framework that I learned from Noelle Piper in Treasuring God in All of Our Traditions. And one thing she talked about is kids are very curious and they want to know why. They want to know why things are the way they are. And so she felt like she wanted to formulate her traditions in such a way that answered the why for her kids, or at least sparked the why, and that the why could be Jesus. Why do we light that candle as Advent, progresses? Well, we light the candle because Jesus was the light of the world. And as we grow closer to the time of his birth, we remember that it was dark and it grows lighter and lighter and brighter until he comes. And just to remember that we are in this second kind of dark time where we're waiting for Jesus to return. He's coming again. And so that's just a small example of you getting as creative as you can, and as you put up the Christmas tree, and as you do this, and as you do that, and as you turn on that special music, why, and that you would get to be able to say Jesus. One thing too is to just, when you're decorating, think about the 5 senses. We don't have to go out and get a bunch of clutter. We don't have to go out and get a bunch of, just quote unquote Hobby Lobby decor. We can create an environment with the 5 senses. I learned about this from McQuillan Smith in her book about just the seasons and how she changes the music, she changes the smell, she changes like the textures of how things feel. Maybe it's like cozy blankets and things like that, but you can change a whole environment with the 5 senses. So even just getting super creative, like what does that look like to trigger the 5 senses so that the mind is like, oh, Jesus, just to remember that it's a time of worship and wonder and waiting again. So what are some of the resources that have been so amazing to me? One, music. Talking about the five senses, you know, if you ask your Siri or Alexa or whatever to play Christmas music, they're going to default to holiday music, and it's going to be like jingle bells and all the things. I'm not mad about that, but I want to. There are some rich, rich Christmas hymns, and it's hard to kind of find that. So here are the ones that have been really helpful to me. I wrote them down. So Phil Wickham's Christmas albums, Literally Gold. Dave Barnes has some really sweet music for Christmas. That was actually my first date with my husband years ago, was the Christmas concert that Dave Barnes did. So that's near and dear to my heart. Josh Groban. And just getting some quality lyrics with our Christmas music can just be so rich in helping to point. You know, that's going to get in our hearts and our minds really quickly. Music just gets in there, goes through the back door of our minds. So that's one idea. This book, I can't say enough about this book. Even if you don't like John Piper for some reason, maybe you're an Arminian and you don't like Calvinist theology, it doesn't matter. This is a phenomenal book. She goes through all different types of traditions, but especially Christmas. And it's just so beautiful. Like what she did to point her kids to Christ. She even has lots of recipes in here. I've really, really enjoyed this book, and I go back to it often. You know, she gives some things about Santa, like why she chose not to do Santa. Here are some things she said. Look at the attributes of Santa. He's omniscient. He sees everything you do. He rewards you if you're good. He's omnipresent. At least he can be everywhere in one night. He gives good gifts. He's the most famous old man figure in the sky. Her point, like, if we are, quote unquote, doing Santa and really telling our kids that he exists, then, like, is that going to dilute their vision of Christ? And I think that that's really, really important when you think about the resources that you are getting, like the books, even the children's books you're buying, is just thinking about, like, if my highest goal is to point my kids to Christ and Christmas, are all these other things just diluting what Christmas means to my kids? And I don't do this perfectly by any means. In our house, how we do Santa is we just say, like, hey, Santa was, like, based off a real person, St. Nicholas. These are the wonderful things that he did. And they created like a figure in honor of him. And we are Santa. Like, we want our kids to know, like, the sacrifice it took for us to buy them some gifts. We want them to know, like, we don't have an endless budget. And so we just are like, mommy and daddy are Santa. It gets a little awkward sometimes when, like, random strangers are like, what is Santa bringing you? They're like, well, what's mom and dad bringing me? When we first, you know, we're talking with family, like, we don't want to do Santa. Whew, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. We'll get back to that. Let's keep going with resources. Can't recommend this enough. So good. This is fun. This is not all about Jesus. It's a wild and free holidays. Some family activities. Now, it's lovely. Like, there are some lovely, lovely things in here. Also, things that have nothing to do with Christ, but some beautiful ideas. But this wool felted, like, Advent spiral. There are some things in here that point to Christ, which has been really fun. And I think the lighting of the Advent candles is a really sweet way to just signal to the kids that it's getting closer and closer. Another thing we've really loved is I have enjoyed this Peaceful Press Christmas guide. And she takes this, I think my kids just got home, so we're going to keep rolling in if you hear stuff. But it's Unearthing Wonder. It's a really sweet book.
Mama.
Yes.
No one.
Okay. So Matt took the kids to go play it at my friend's house, and so they just got back. But I want to finish this video. I want to keep telling you about this stuff. On Unearthing Wonder, that was a really, really sweet book. Now, it's not all about Jesus, but what is really cool about that book is it kind of teaches you that all of creation is waiting for Christ to return, like even nature and the animals, which is so amazing. It's not something I thought about before, but there is some like evolutionist thought in that book, which that's not something we teach our kids. So I kind of just omitted some of that out. And then there's this companion that's in the Christmas guide called Unearthing Wonder. And so what's really important is she kind of gives some Christians' perspective on this, like some commentary. So like the first one is like, I didn't even know this, but turtles go to the mud underneath the water, the painted turtle. So the first one's like the painted turtle and what they do and how their body like slows during the winter time. Oh, let me finish. I'm almost done.
I want to hold this.
Okay, well, you look at that while I talk. And she gives some commentary like the turtle settles into a stillness so deep it's near death, and yet it's this radical simplicity that will save her. This ability to conquer the temptation to rush up into the day and draw a breath. Their ability to sense the seasons and to be still and simple when needed becomes a means of salvation for them. But for us, stillness and simplicity can surely save us from stress and anxiety. And Christmas that is characterized by anything but peace on our earth and goodwill to men. As we learn to embrace simplicity, even in baby steps, we can begin to experience a close relationship and more life. And as we learn to quiet our hearts and to listen before we make decisions, we can experience the comforting presence of God in new ways. And then she gives a Bible verse. But I'm afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by the craftiness, your minds will be led astray from the simplicity and the purity of devotion to Christ. So 2 Corinthians 11:3. I don't know what version that is, but I love it because I had never really thought about how, nature is meant to point us to Christ. It's meant to like lead us into awe and wonder about who he is. And even creation is like holding its breath and waiting for Jesus to return in a way. And so that has been a very interesting way. I know kids are usually very interested in animals. And so we've enjoyed that resource. Like I said, I just omit certain things. And then the Life Giving Home by Sally Clarkson, that's a really sweet book. She goes month by month in some traditions that she did to cultivate just appreciation for love and for one another and ultimately for Jesus in her home. So that's just a great book month by month. I have loved that one. Paul Tripp has a book, Come and Adore Him. That's a Christmas devotion that we really love. And I think that my friend Brittany pointed out that one of the main things we can do to just have Jesus high and lifted up in the Christmas season is for us to be fully, joyfully satisfied in Jesus in the Christmas season. Like if we are swept away by materialism in the Christmas season, I feel like it really is going to dilute that for the message for our kids. Like we're saying Jesus is the most important thing, but then we're like captured by materialism and feeling like we need to get our kids a million gifts and we need to do all the things that the world is doing. Like if we can have Jesus treasured up and our heart is the most important priority during the Christmas season, that's going to be the most contagious thing for our kids. And so I love that point from my friend. And so Paul Tripp's devotion is a very deep and rich devotion that my husband and I have enjoyed. We don't read it perfectly every day. Like we're not religious about that, but it has been a really good nudge for us. Another really fun resource, and it might be a tick late to do this if you're just seeing it, but if you're getting really close to Christmas, it's okay just to let this go, but keep it in your mind for next year. And if you're just watching this video when it comes out, I think it's called Christmas of Deb. I have the notebook upstairs, but she gives you 30 missions to do to get ready for Christmas. And her whole goal is that you will have as much as you can have done by December 1st so that you can fully enjoy the Christmas season. It's just like we're procrastinating and waiting to the last minute. And so we do have to get certain gifts, perhaps for family. And, that shopping's taking time and it can take a lot of our focus. But so she just really helps you like plan and get on top of it so that when you go to enter into December, you can really lean in hard to your Advent traditions. And I think that's really cool. So I'm going to try that this year and report back. But I think it's called Christmas of Deb on Instagram. She has a free printable you can do. And then the Etsy printable, I think, is a couple dollars for all the missions. I'll link all that down below. But I'm excited to try that because I'm such a procrastinator and I feel like it really kind of it doesn't ruin the vibe of December for me, but it makes me more rushed than I want to be. And I really want to slow, kind of like the turtle that we were just listening to, like the slow into the stillness. A lot of commitments are kind of done in December and it can be just a quiet time to just kind of go inward a little bit. And I love that. Yeah, the snowflakes is so pretty. Okay, so how do we handle when our family just doesn't understand what we want to do? I mean, I think that this has just helped me so much. It's just we're not going to please every person. And honestly, the people that love us the most are going to understand. And what I've seen with my family is they love us. And, while they may have loved their certain traditions and they were a little confused why we didn't want to continue them, ultimately, over time, they respected us more and more when we're like, no, like, hard line. We're just not doing Santa for our kids. It's not what we're trying to ruin all the fun. We're still going to have a great time. It took time for them to understand. So I think just risk being misunderstood by the people that love you the most. It's okay. It's okay if they don't get it. this is your family. This is your chance to be a parent. And so if grandparents don't understand, that's okay. Just hear them out, be super respectful, honor their views. But at the end of the day, these are your kids. And I think it's okay to try to do family traditions the way that you see fit and the way that, you think is best, because ultimately you don't want to feel like you're being drugged behind a bus of traditions that you don't really want to be doing. You're not going to be all in. Well, I'll just wrap it up by saying that it is possible to make Christmas all about Jesus. It's going to take a lot of intentionality. It's going to take just going against the world a little bit, not doing everything the way the world does it. We're just going to have to cut some of those things and risk frustrating, hurting possible feelings of family that doesn't understand. But ultimately, right, we're living for the audience of one. We're living to please the Lord first and foremost. And I think honoring him in our traditions is a really big part of that. So I hope that you gleaned a couple of ideas. There's so many other things you can do. I also made a video that's like all about decorating for Christmas with just like natural decor that doesn't cost much. I made another video on simple gifts you can give.
Mom, I saw an egg.
So I hope those resources can be a help to you this Christmas season, and I hope you'll stick around and hit subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next video.